Aloha, namaste. This is Alexis Cox with Radha Home Yoga, and I'm here to bring you your new moon forecast for this coming Friday morning, 1:50 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. So in many other locations, that will actually be Thursday night. The new moon is happening in sidereal Pisces in the nakshatra called Revati. Revati is the final nakshatra, so it's the final star in the Vedic system. There are 27 nakshatras, and some of them bridge two signs, and some of them are wholly in a sign. And this one is fully in sidereal Pisces. It's the final nakshatra, as I mentioned, and it's the long walk home. It's where the deity Pushan, who's a shepherd, walks the animals and the humans to safety. Represents our path, our spiritual path, as we had that lightning strike of awareness in Purva Bhadrapada, where our new moon was last month, and that was, of course, in the Aquarius part of Purva Bhadrapada, in the first pada. Then the second nakshatra is Uttara Bhadrapada, where we sort of do the work. We do what's necessary in order to actually concretize that spiritual awakening that we had in Purva Bhadrapada, to actually walk through the darkness and actually do that hard labor necessary to get there, to walk through the door. And then in Revati, it's sort of the final walk. It's the final part where you've done a lot of the hard work, and yet you're still not quite there, but you're walking more easefully, more gracefully. There's a lot of wealth and abundance available in Revati. It's a nakshatra of wealth, of abundance, and there's the prosperity that comes spiritually from having done the work, from having put the time in, and now the payoffs come. So we have that really intense struggle where we have to dive in deep, and that's shown in Uttara Bhadrapada, where we have to go in really, really deep and muster up the courage to like drink our own poison, basically. And then we come out on the other end, and there's that final leg of the journey, and that's where we're at now. So time to soak in some blessings, time to reap some of the rewards of the hard work we've done, and time to really settle into ourselves and really reflect on everything we've been through, everything we've done, and where we're going. Because of course, this is the last nakshatra in a cycle, but we're going to start again. We're going to start with Aswini again after this new moon, and we're going to have to get into gear into a whole new phase of being. And this year plans to be pretty intense as well. Just like last year, there was a lot of explosivity and fiery energy. This year might feel a bit cooler, but there's a lot of depth of experience that's happening. So one of the biggest changes we've had in this past week is the nakshatra, or excuse me, the nodal axis. The nodes of the moon, which mark the eclipse points, has just shifted. And it technically happened on March 23rd. We had Rahu, the north node of the moon, move up into Gemini from Cancer, and we had Ketu, the south node of the moon, move into sidereal Sagittarius. So what we're seeing is a sudden focus away from that sort of emotional intensity and nurturance and all of these kind of things that Rahu and Cancer brought us. We're moving into a time where the focus is on the facts, the focus is on the information, the focus is on discernment, discerning truth from fiction, taking in information and in a more impartial way, in a more objective way, and determining its truth or relativity not based on an emotional charge, not based on what we love or what we care about, but based on just what our mind processes as true or not true. So it's probably needed in our world right now to really go through this process, but of course it'll be different for everyone based on their own natural discernment. This nodal axis shift happened while Mercury was still retrograde. Mercury just began its direct motion on the 28th. So 5 days before that, the nodal axis switched and Rahu went into Gemini, which is Mercury's sign, and Mercury was retrograde. So right off the bat, our information is confused. It's already delayed, it's behind, it's not happening straightforward. So the focus moves, but the lord of the sign, the ruler of the sign, is in a state of retrograde. Now Mercury is beginning that direct motion, and it's in sidereal Aquarius for a little bit longer. We're at 24 degrees Aquarius, so just a little bit longer before it moves back into Pisces, where it was when it began the retrograde cycle. And then it'll be in a state of debilitation in Pisces, and not retrograde debilitation, which I spoke about in the last video or 2 videos ago. It will be in a state of just debilitation without any delay. So we'll be moving forward with our communication, with our information, but it'll be all jumbled in that Piscean emotional, spiritual sea that does not necessarily serve Mercury very well. While it might be a beautiful time for us to reflect and for our spiritual longings and connections to really thrive and bloom, it's a time when information gets really lost and really confused. It's hard to discern truth from fiction when you're living in a space or communicating from a space where everything could be true. Anything could really be possible. And that's the beauty of Pisces on so many levels. But when it comes to communication, when it comes to truth, when it comes to facts and figures, that's a messy territory, because all things are not equal and all truths are not equal. There is not, there has to be some level of discernment about what is real and what is not real. And there's a lot of dissension on that subject throughout the world. We don't all agree on what is real. In fact, we greatly disagree. But even within our own self, even within our own, camp of belief, there's going to be confusion and delusion. So that's something to look out for as we move into that sort of obsessive phase, which is really what Rahu, the North Node, brings, is that obsession, that quality of just hyper focus and expanding everything to be in this huge, grandiose view of it where we really don't see things clearly. Both of the nodes bring us a level of delusion and illusion because they don't see things clearly in this world. They're literally the eclipse points. They're the mathematically figured out points in time and space where eclipses will happen. So in this next year and a half, every time there's a new moon or a full moon in the Gemini-Sagittarius axis, and again, this is in the sidereal zodiac, we will see eclipses occur. So eclipses are by nature very much about the illusion, and they are otherworldly. They bring us information from other realms, and they are, either very insightful or very delusional, depending on our own intelligence in that area and depending on, other factors in the sky at the time of the eclipse. So we can see that there's going to be this sort of magnification of facts, magnification and idealization of truth, but not necessarily intelligence with truth, not necessarily accuracy or wisdom coming into play. In fact, we're going to be pulling away from some of that wisdom, some of that deeper wisdom that Sagittarius brings. Sagittarius can be faith-driven, it can be optimistic, and it can be even religious, but it can also really hold deep kernels of truth that do not fare well in the dissection of information when we're trying to just discern truth from fiction. So sometimes we need to have faith. Sometimes we need to understand that something is true at its most basic essence, even if all the other things around it can be proven wrong or, swayed this way or that way. There's a kernel of truth in there. So both are necessary. We're needing to question. We're needing to look into truth, and in a scientific, in a mathematical, in an intelligent, discerning manner. And we're also needing to hold space for eternal truths and ultimate truths, and that wisdom that comes when you actually take everything that you know, all those facts, all that knowledge, and are able to bring it together and have some wisdom derived from that. Oftentimes with Gemini, what can happen is there's so much information and there's so many different paths that are being taken. They just remain that. They remain a bunch of different pieces of information. It's like a million different articles on your phone or on your iPad or on your laptop, but you haven't brought them together. There's no through line, there's no point. It's just a bunch of stuff. So the wisdom part comes in when you can actually glean something from that. When something is brought together and there's a truth, a greater truth that comes from all that information and all those facts and all those figures and all that stuff that Gemini brings up. But the airy energy of Gemini makes you keep going to the next thing, keep going to the next thing, keep going to the next thing. There's not a lot of follow through. So this can be a big issue for us, especially because Rahu, that north node, brings a lot of airy energy. So we're going to see that there's a scattered nature where we're just constantly starting anew and sort of obsessed with starting anew again and again and again, and learning more and more and more and more, but not necessarily, doing anything with that information. Or really, in a lot of ways, even understanding on a deeper level what it is we're seeing. So this is our next year and a half, and as Ketu is in Sagittarius, we're going to be pulling away from, almost sort of disgusted with the faith, the wisdom, the optimism, and the beliefs. Maybe even the ones we've held or been championing for some time now. So that should be an interesting shift for all of us. One of the things that makes it even more interesting is that Saturn is in Sagittarius. Saturn has been in Sagittarius since January of 2017. There was a short stint it moved out in 2017, then it moved back in, and it's going to remain there until January of 2020. So Saturn is really holding camp here in Sagittarius, and certainly anyone who's a Sagittarian rising sign has been experiencing this to a pretty strong degree. But that energy of Saturn has made us committed to our beliefs even more than usual. It's also forced us to be humbled around our beliefs and perhaps distilled some of those beliefs to a realism. There's a quality that is very non-religious when you see Saturn and Jupiter come together, because you start to see the cold, hard realities, the cold, hard truths, and that optimism gets lost. It can definitely be alignment that loses the grace of the wisdom and brings it to its bare bones reality. And it can be cold and it can be harsh, but again, it can bring that commitment around your beliefs. So perhaps even defending something even when the joy is gone, even when the joy is left. With Ketu there, joy will be scant, because Ketu is where we're really dissatisfied in this world. Unlike Rahu, where we're very naive, Ketu is where we have a lot of past experience, where we know a lot about something, but we don't really enjoy it. We don't get a lot of pleasure out of engaging in that area of our life. So for each of us, it's a different area of our life. It's a different house. It could be your relationship house. It could be your house of self. Like I said, if Sagittarius is your rising sign, then you've really been feeling a lot of self-dissatisfaction, a lot of self-humility, a lot of self-suffering just from Saturn being there. And then, of course, with Ketu moving in, it's going to be even more. It could be your house of children. It can be any different house for you depending on what your rising sign is. And in fact, I just finished the report on the new nodal axis on Rahu and Gemini and Ketu and Sagittarius, and I break it down for each of the 12 rising signs, so you can really see how it is going to affect you specifically. So if you aren't already on my email list, go ahead and sign up for that now, and you will automatically get that report. And it can be very helpful for you in this next year and a half, just to see where that focus is, just to see what you're amplifying and what you're sort of pulling away from. So Saturn joined Ketu is enough of a sort of cold, harsh reality. And then Saturn is going to begin its retrograde cycle. And we have Saturn beginning retrograde at the end of April 30th. And it's a long cycle. It goes all the way till September 18th. So we're going to see this period where we're really questioning our commitments, especially around our beliefs, where we're really having to reprocess and re-go over a lot of that hardship and a lot of that humility and a lot of those lessons that we might have thought we already learned. It can be brutal for sure when Saturn goes retrograde. especially with that south node there. And then on top of it, with all of that repression under the surface, with our beliefs and our humilities and our commitments and all of these things that we're so unsure of, we're going to see Jupiter, the ruler of Sagittarius, who just moved into Sagittarius for a little tiny short stint. Jupiter's been in Scorpio since the fall, and it's going to go back into Scorpio very soon. But for right now, it stepped its foot into its own sign of Sagittarius, and it's about to start retrograde motion as well. So April 10th, coming right up here, we have Jupiter going retrograde. This is going to bring even more confusion around our beliefs, because we're going to be not only questioning our commitments to our beliefs, but questioning our beliefs themselves, questioning our teachers, our teachings, our wisdom. So many factors coming up that we're really going to be up in the air about, even ourselves as wisdom keepers, or our own beliefs and our own teachings. And if we're teachers, all of it is going to be a lot of thinking, mulling it over, questioning, and delays. Just a lot of delays on our forward motion in these important areas of our life, because what we believe inspires us to do stuff. And if we are confused about what we believe, we're not going to feel very inspired to do things. We're going to feel confused about where to go and what to do. And then if we're also confused about our commitments towards these things, that's going to make it even more challenging for us to have forward motion in our life. So expect this to be a little bit of a messy experience for you, as you maybe even a soul-wrenching experience, as you really have to question so many things that you thought were the easy part. Perhaps the part, just believing what you believe is the easy part, and then making it happen or materializing it can be hard. But if it's hard to even know what you believe, then we really get into some challenging areas, because then we're not founded on anything solid for ourselves, and we don't have that faith, that inspiration, that hope, and that idealism that helps us move forward. And we also don't have that humility, hard work, and commitment that we need in order to move forward. So it's going to be an intense time. Both Jupiter and Saturn go retrograde for very long periods of time. Mercury retrograde gets a lot of press. Everybody knows about it. Everybody talks about it. Our computers go haywire, our phones, all of these communication things happen. But when Jupiter and Saturn go retrograde, it is for almost half of the year, and it is a very, very intense experience for all of us that really rocks us to the core. And in this particular case, Jupiter is going to be going back into Scorpio, so we're going to continue that personal faith study that we've had to do, where we really have to reflect on our own shadow side. And maybe that first part where Jupiter went into Scorpio, you were still projecting out and still noticing what other people might not be doing in a way that makes you happy or that aligns with your beliefs. But as it goes back in a retrograde cycle, we're going to start really having to reflect on the ways in which we do not live up to our own potential, or to our own ideals and our own vision of what is right and what is wrong and what is morality. And so a lot of deep shadow work coming up for us on both a tangible material level and also on a spiritual and more esoteric level. So it's time to lose the attachment to the material world and really focus on a spiritual experience, because that's what we're having, that's what we're here for, and that's really what we're doing. So all of the things that are happening in the material world make our lives harder or easier. We feel good or we don't feel good, but at the end of the day, if we don't have a true faith founded on practices we actually do and hold ourselves, and shadows that we sit in ourselves, and mirrors that we look in, then we don't really have much. And that's that's a lot of what we're going to learn. So this new moon is sort of a chance to sit in it in a nicer way, in a more pleasant way, as we take the end of this part of the journey in Revati, and then as we move forward into the Jupiter retrograde April 10th and Saturn retrograde April 30th, we're going to start to have to delve in a little deeper. The journey is definitely not done. We have Venus and Mercury both joined in Aquarius right now. Like I said, Mercury is going to move back into Pisces in the next week or so, but Venus has a little bit more time there, and that's pulling us away from our personal love. It's pulling us away from our need for our relationships to be so one-to-one or so romantic. or personal needs based or based on the other person's needs. And it's allowing us to see universal love for society as a whole. It's allowing our happiness and our joy and our pleasure to come from a place of serving the greater good and serving greater humanity and society around us. So it's a good opportunity to sort of pull out of our own pleasure circuit and allow ourselves to find pleasure and take pleasure in helping others and in creating structures that will help all of us in the long run, in the long term, and giving us that vision, that really sweet vision for the future and how things can be if we all pull together, do our part, probably in our head have the same beliefs as we personally hold, but maybe we can even have the expansion in our viewpoint to understand that our own belief systems and other people's belief systems generally have one undercurrent that is the same. Most people want the world to be better. They want their own life to be better, yes, sure, but most people aren't that selfish. They want their neighbors' lives to be better. They want their friends, their families, their loved ones' lives to be better. They just disagree on how that will happen. So you and me and anyone else you might know or engage with or interact with, or the people on Facebook that you fight with, those people probably want the core thing that you want, which is to be happy themselves and for the world to be a safe, good, happy place. But we all disagree on what will make that happen. And that is the issue that we fight on more than anything else. The issue that we disagree on is what will bring the result we all want to see. So once we can keep tapping back into and remembering, it's not that these people want a horrible world, or that these people over here want everyone, to wither away and die, or that these people want everyone to starve, or this, that, and nobody actually wants that. There might be a few very nefarious people who do want that. I don't know, I'm not going to speak on that, but the mass majority of individuals on this planet do not want that. They want what you want. Happiness for themselves, peace, ease, security for their family, for their friends, and for their neighbors. And we just don't necessarily see eye to eye on how that will best happen and how we can make that unfold. So keep that in mind as you go forward. Your beliefs are strong. Someone else's beliefs are strong too. Neither of your beliefs are 100% right. Neither of them are 100% wrong. They're founded on your experience and your past and what you understand and bring to the table, and so are theirs. And they both have kernels of truth in them, and they both have places where they've been very skewed by the facts and information that you or the other person have taken in from the outside world. So perhaps in this Rahu and Gemini period, we can use our discernment and really start to boil down what facts are true, what facts are not, and hopefully it will be a time for a lot more truth to rise to the surface. I hope this has been helpful for you. If you want to comment, please do. If you want to share this with your friends, please do that as well. Again, sign up for my email list. You will get that amazing report that will help you so much in the next year and a half. Rahu and Ketu for all of us, what's happening with Rahu and Gemini, Ketu and Sagittarius, and then break it down for your 12, for the 12 rising signs. So you can see where it's affecting you in your life and what house it's lighting up in both you, your friends, your partners, your family, anyone else's life you want to look at too. I hope you have a blessed and beautiful new moon in Revati. Namaste.